Hey everybody, this is Andy from Tecnifibre, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Tecnifibre TF40 305. So a big release for Tecnifibre. The Racket represents them being 40 years in business, and it's kind of happened that now this racket enters a busy marketplace, doesn't it? You have the new Graphene 360 Plus Prestige MP offering a nice 1820 string pattern. You obviously have the Yonex Vcore Pro 97 HD, which I've also reviewed, being a good racket with that dense string pattern of 1820. You have the gravity lines, and then of course you still have the Pure Strike 1820 and the Blade 1820. So this has got to be something special to stand out in that crowd. And I've got high hopes for this racket. Hopefully you've seen my review of my racket, its brother, the XDC T-Fight 305. I really like that racket, but secretly I guess I sort of yearn for a return to a real control orientated 1820 frame. I of course did play with an 1820 frame as a junior. So my secret hope sort of entering into this review process was that this would end up being the kind of ticket that I'd switch to. I guess it's got a similar sort of DNA with Dynacore XTC. I noticed the TF40 has some new grommets, which they call Extents BG grommets. On reading a bit about those, that's intended to increase string movement and also comfort. So it's kind of promising from a tech point of view. And looking at the claimed specs that are readily available online, you have a 98 square inch head, 305 unstrung weight, 33.3 balance points, so that's quite interesting to me. We have an interesting distribution similar to its brother, the T-Fight XTC 305, so I'm expecting good plow through, 64 RA, which is nice, right in my kind of wheelhouse, 1820 string pattern with a claim swing weight of 326. So initial thoughts, taking it out for some sort of basic baseline hits, certainly got a sense of really nice control, relatively easy transition from my racket, which is nice. I guess it does have those similarities. My concern, as you'll know from this channel, with an 1820 string pattern combined with my older frame and my technique, is launch angle, and certainly I made a sort of big error early on. I did buy two rackets as it is potentially switchable, and I had in the first racket that I hit with some Dunlop Black Widow just strung kind of too tight. I had it at 54 pounds, and I was finding a little bit of a sort of inconsistent response from the string bed, a slightly lower launch angle than I would have liked. Not saying that I couldn't adjust to it, I was adjusting, but it wasn't sort of the perfect setup to me, but I suspected that was strings to begin with. So I corrected that. I strung up the other again with Dunlop Black Widow, went quite low at 50 pounds, and that made quite a difference. I started to sort of click with it on the baseline, and my first hit with it was literally just 45 minutes from the baseline, trading some shots with a friend. That next sort of hitting session was a bit more intense, more kind of structured drills, forehand, backhand, and that sort of lighter tension certainly made a big difference, and I was really clicking with it. I actually felt that this was a really solid and good racket from the baseline, and I didn't have any launch angle problems, much like the Head Prestige MP, the new version, easy depth, which is always encouraging, and I could still generate some quite good spin if I put the mechanics in place for that, so really encouraged at that point. I then had another couple of kind of casual hits and switched between that racket and the other version of the racket that I bought, and in that I had a bit of a eureka moment. I put Solinco Torbite Soft in that racket, again nice and low at 50 pounds, and I was getting an even better response. Bit of a eureka moment, just really kind of gelling with that string in that racket, and also just finding that I could kind of really dial in much better, find targets. So there was something about that racket and that string and that setup that was just working a little bit better than the other, but I was really feeling that I was starting to gel with the racket really well. And then moving on to some kind of friendly still but sort of match play really started to enjoy the racket. So I felt on serve the racket was certainly giving me a nice lot of power and accuracy. I also just love that the racket kind of does what you hope it's going to do. So if you are looking to pick a spot and hit out, it gives you great control. If you're looking to construct a point and move in and finish at the net, it's great at net. It's certainly got equal stability for my needs, and I wasn't having any problems on the baseline with maneuverability. And I guess with that kind of balance point and weight distribution, that's potentially a challenge for some people, but I was finding it to be maneuverable enough. I wouldn't necessarily class it as a whippy racket, of course, with a combination of the sort of swing weight and balance distribution on this racket. Again, back to some more kind of structured drills, it was really performing well at net. Also, if I was playing some kind of baseline points, again, it was performing really well. I'd sort of adjusted to the launch angle, which is lower than a sort of 16-19 string pattern, or indeed my racket of choice, but I felt it sort of stacked up well next to those strong competitors, the Yonex HD, and also the new Prestige MP. You have an 18-20 with control like those two rackets, but you have a very manageable launch angle. You can play with some good spin too. So really starting to gel with the racket at that point. And then this is where a little bit of confusion kind of came in, really. So I went back to a couple of friendly matches again, and I kind of picked my opponents. They're friends, and it was friendly matches ultimately, but one was a guy who I kind of view as a very comparable player to me, and my results were a bit mixed. I didn't particularly play very well with it next to how I played the week before. I lost the match. I'd won the match the week previous, and then I had another hit with somebody, wasn't a match, but somebody who I kind of expect to win in points, and it was a little bit kind of hit and miss. So I was getting a feeling that my performance with the racket was probably a little bit up and down, and then I started to realize that actually there was a difference between the two rackets that I had, and I think some of that is probably down to strings. I think that Solinco Tour Bite Soft works particularly well in the racket, and I'm not so sure that Black Widow does work particularly well. So I would say with this racket it has loads of strengths, but you've got to get the stringing right. Then when I homed in on that racket and just kind of used that for the rest of the review, so I played with just that racket for pretty much a solid week, things just really started to tick and everything was great. So my overall take on this racket is that you have a control orientated racket, very stable, you can generate good spin, nice launch angle considering it's 18-20, it is comfortable, it has plenty of plow through, good plow through actually next to its competitors, and also you have something that has lovely touch and control sort of feel at net and at those shorter points. So you kind of have a racket that just does everything really well, a real potential kind of modern classic, and certainly something that I was just really enjoying playing with all the time, which I think shouldn't be underestimated. But you might be noticing a sort of little bit of hesitation in my voice, so I'm not ready to switch to it yet. I might do, but I have one or two slight kind of niggles. The first is on quality control. So as I mentioned in my review on my T-Fight XTC 305, I have 3 of those rackets, and I think I probably lucked out in terms of them all being pretty much the same specs across the board. I found that there was a difference between my 2 TF40 305s, and I'll put those up for you now. So these are my confirmed specs that I've tested, and there is a difference, and I can't quite get my head around whether the slight difference in the weight and the swing weight and balance point in this racket is what made me sort of click with this more than the other, or whether it was just purely down to those strings. And I will continue to play with these, put Solinco Tour Bite Soft in the other, and see if that makes a difference. Also, kind of really minor niggle, but it's stuck in my mind. You notice them in there, you have that little ATP badge. Now I think that's quite a cool thing. It kind of attaches them to the ATP tour. I think they have some sort of relationship with them. Now on my third hit, that really cool badge just jumped out of the racket, and I had to go and super glue it back in. And a minor thing, but I just thought, oh, what a shame, you know, kind of a really nice little tag, and it just left me with a niggle of doubt about the kind of quality of the manufacturer. Now I'm sure that I'll sort of get over it, as I am really enjoying this racket, but as I say, just a minor thing, and I guess in the spirit of giving balanced reviews, then might be helpful. So how does it compare to that crowd of very strong competition? So straight off the bat, I would say that I would pick this over the Yonex Vcore Pro 97 HD. For me, you have a more sort of trusted response. I think it really knows what it's doing, and the Vcore Pro 97 HD, as I mentioned in my review, took me a while to adjust to it, and I kept on having to adjust to it. This was easy to adjust to, and I guess there's some similarities to my racket of choice. I would say that it's a close run thing with regards to the Prestige MP new version. There are some similarities, but I think this has slightly better touch and feel. How does it compare to the Blade? So I think it does compare in terms of feel to the V7 Wilson Blade. However, I've only hit the 1619, so a fair comparison must be to the 1820, but I can imagine that they would play very similar, so it might come down to just kind of brand preference and styling. And then I have hit with the Pure Strike 1820, both the 3rd generation and the Project 17 version, and I would take this over those any day. I think it is more comfortable, and ultimately I think it has better control. So I think this is way up there in a group of very good rackets. However, one thing that I would say is my next video will look at the Gravity line, the Tour and the Pro line, and I think those two rackets are showing great early potential in my first hits and will come close to this. So in summary then, fantastic racket that does everything really well. I'm pretty sure that if there was a 1619, it would be my racket of choice. That said, I am very close to switching to this. I've got to get the string tension right. I'll continue to play around with that. Have that, I suppose, kind of niggle against that quality control, so I might need to get two matched, but it'll be interesting to see what they're like with exactly the same strings in it. And what does the racket do? It plays very well from the baseline. You can hit out with great control. It does offer you good spin for an 1820. The launch angle is manageable, small adjustment period, fantastic touch and feel on the racket, lovely at net, great to serve with. This really is a racket that I think you can sort of pick up and grow with, and I think lots of people who are used to playing with classic frames will really enjoy this racket and will likely switch to it if they play with it. Hope you enjoyed the review. Another thumbs up for Tecnifibre. Next up is going to be the Gravity line. I've got the Pro and the Tour in hand, ready to review. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see them. That will probably be up in the next 7 to 10 days once I've had enough court time with them. If the video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up because that's really helpful for me, and subscribe to the channel if you generally are interested in racket reviews, tennis racket terminology, and also hints and tips for fitness around tennis. See you soon.